Hello, thanks for joining me today. I'm Jan Clothier of Thinking Stamping, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in New Zealand. And today I thought I'd share with you how I made this card using the Earthen Textures bundle, which is one of my favourites from the 2023 to 2024 catalogue. I am a bit of a sucker for pots and plants and things like that. So I thought I'd share with you how I made this one. So we'll start off. Obviously you need the Earthen Textures bundle. It does bundle with a lovely set of dies, some of which we're going to use for this. The colours that we're going to use today are Mossy Meadow, Copper Clay and Misty Moonlight. I think they work together quite nicely for this sort of earthy project. So those are our colours. And now I'm going to tell you about what bits of paper and things that we need to get going with. Now, if as I'm going through today you see anything that you'd like to add to your craft collection and you live in New Zealand, then please shop with me. There's a link to my online store in the video description below. So I've used a card base of Misty Moonlight, and as always for me it's a standard size card base, so it's half of an A4 piece of card. It's 21 centimetres wide, scored at 10.5, and I've cut it at 14.8. So that's my base. If you're not a metrics person, then just use whatever your standard card size is and just adjust the other mats accordingly. So I'm going to require 3 pieces of basic white, and they are each of them is the same size, so half a centimetre or 5 millimetres smaller than the card front. So if you were using Imperial, that's about 1/4 inch. Okay, so each of these pieces is 10 centimetres by 14.3. Now one of those is for the inside, which we'll just pop aside because we don't need that right now. And the other 2 are to construct the front, which I'll tell you about shortly because that's really where all the action happens. We also need a piece of copper clay. Now you can see what I've done with this, I'm sure. I have stamped it in copper clay using that pot stamp, and then I've just die cut it with the die. And you can see the really nice thing that happens with this set is the dies are just ever such a little bit smaller than the stamped image, so you get the pattern going all the way to the edge. Okay, so you've got your copper clay piece with that die and stamp. Now I've got a little piece of Misty Moonlight, and I have stamped it in Misty Moonlight using that, and then die cut it with the corresponding die, and so you end up with a lovely piece like that. Now you also need a little strip of white. Now what I've done here, I have not used the sentiments from the set because all of this Earthen Textures sentiments are all really to do more with thanks and gratitude, and I was after a sort of a masculine inspired birthday card. So I was looking for a sentiment that had a bit of weight that wasn't particularly ornate, and so I've used this one from Artistically Inked, which again is one of my all-time favourite sets. So I've used the Happy Birthday from that. I just stamped it onto a piece of a strip of white, and then I just trimmed it down and cut it into 2 pieces, and I've used copper clay for that. So that's all ready for us when we need it. And you also need another little piece of white to make these little toy feathers, which I'm going to show you how to do shortly because it's not just a straight stamp. Right, so that's all the bits and pieces that we need. So what are we going to do first? Well, I think I will make this bit so it's all ready and done for us. So I've taken this stamp here, which is the 3 feathery stems. I'm not sure what they're called in other countries. I think here in New Zealand we would call them toy. Well, that's certainly what they look like to me. They grow in swamps and wetlands. Okay, so I'm going to start with some copper clay. And I've got a sponge dauber here, and I'm just going to take the dauber and I'm just going to daub on to the stems in copper clay because I want the stems to be stem-like. And then I've got another sponge dauber. I'm going to take my Mossy Meadow and I'm just going to daub that onto the stem heads, the feathery bits. just pop my daubers over there, close up my ink. Now, if you've taken a long time to do that and you think the ink might have dried, just loosen it up by giving it a quick breath. And then onto your paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the ink's got time to transfer. And then, lo and behold, you've got a lovely little toy cluster with some stems. And there is, of course, a beautiful die to cut that out. And you end up with a lovely little stem like that. So now we've got all the bits. So what I'm going to look at now is the background piece. So I don't know whether you can see, but I've got this embossed panel here, which is part of the card front. So what I'm going to do is, before I do any embossing, I'm going to do the stamping and the inking. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the die here where I think I'm most likely to want it on the finished product. And then I'm just going to give myself a line inside the die. And the reason I'm doing it inside the die is so that there's no chance of it showing in the finished product. And then that's just to sort of give me a citer to work from. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pop a post-it note just there, so that I don't get stamping on that portion of the paper, although it probably wouldn't matter. I just don't want it there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the most solid of these two stems, and I'm going to stamp that in copper clay. So I'm just going to ink it up, tap, 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 don't mash, 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 tap, tap, tap. And I'm going to give myself solid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Time for the ink to transfer. And then I'm just going to move it slightly and stamp it off again so that it looks fuller than if it's just a single stamp and it looks like there's a bit of depth happening. So we'll do that. And then I'm going to take my Misty Moonlight and this one here, the more feathery looking of the foliage. I'm just going to again tap, 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 tap. And I'm just going to stamp that once. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, just to give myself some of that colour in the background. Right, close that up so there's no ink disasters. Check your fingers, and I think I'll just wipe them just to make sure. Okay. I'll lift up my post-it note, and you can see now that when I pop that there, there's going to be no bits of stray stem poking out the side. It's all going to look quite neat. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back down to where my bottom line is and get my post-it note, because I just want there to be something to ground the, I just want something to ground the pots. So I'm going to take my Mossy Meadow and my blending brush, and I'm just going to circle on just a bit of a surface, sort of a bit of a lawn or a terrace or something. It doesn't have to be much, it just has to be a suggestion. Okay, so now it's looking all a bit weird, but what we're going to do next is very carefully start tearing. So I'm just going to tear down the side. I'm going to try and keep it narrow and not too uniform. You don't want to get over here where the urn's going to be, but I'm just ripping off along the side. And it's going to give us that nice distressed, worn look. And I'm going to do the same thing down here, but obviously I'm going for a wider look. So just tear down. Okay, and then what I'm going to do with that now is, as soon as I find where I've put it on my desk, I'm going to get my embossing folder. Seems to have right where I left it. Okay, so here I'm going to use the Exposed Brick 3D embossing folder, but you could use anything that you have. I quite like this look because it's distressed and it kind of looks gardeny because there's bits of brick and there's bits of foliage. So it does truly look like a garden path. So I'm just going to go and emboss that. Right, and now we've got our beautiful little panel. And so it's just a question of assembly now. So, card base. Now, it is possible, and it would work just as nicely, I think, if you did a copper base. That would also work. You can see you could use copper clay if you wanted to. I'm going to stick with Misty Moonlight, but copper clay is certainly a valid choice to make with this card. So we're just going to start with one of the plain bases that we had, one of the plain 10 by 14.3 whites, to give us a background. And we're just going to attach that. As you know, the glue's going to give us a bit of wiggle room. Now, you could have attached this bit first. That would also have worked. So we, you know, it's not like there's a rule about it. Possibly doing it first would have been easier. We'll find out shortly. Okay, so just a bit of glue around the edge. Because it's textured, I'm going to put a bit more glue in the middle, because when you're putting textured and flat together, you know, you need a little bit more pressure. Okay, so now we're just going to attach that wherever we like. Now I'm deliberately aiming to have it over on one side and not centrally. That's how I've designed it to be. If you want to be more central, then by all means make yours more central. Okay, so now we've got that going. Next thing is we can attach our urn, our big long copper clay urn. So a bit of glue. Where's my tweezers? There they are. Okay, and you can see because I put the pencil lines inside the die, there's no chance of them showing up on our finished product. And again, I'm giving it a bit more of a press than I normally would, just because I'm attaching a flat thing to a textured thing. Now with this one, I'm going to do it slightly differently. I'm going to pop these up on dimensionals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take that away and give myself a little marker so I know where I'm popping it. And dimensionals. Okay, 1, 2, and perhaps I will pop a mini over there. Okay. Perhaps just one there. You know me, you know I like to have things well dimensional on. Right, now I can line that up with my little pencil mark so I know where to put it. Now what I am going to do though is, just now that I've done that, I am going to cut off that bottom piece. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I've got a nice space to put a dimensional at the bottom of this urn. I'm going to put a dimensional there, and I'm going to pop some glue here, because I don't need another dimensional up here because this is already on dimensionals. So I'm just going to pop in a bit of glue, and this urn, the top of the urn, the bottom of the urn will be dimensional, and the top of the urn will be glued. So now I can just line that up a little bit. Now, okay, so our last little bits are, I'm going to line that up on my grid paper to help maximize my chances of getting this straight. How am I going to do that? well, I think I'm just going to glue that happy. Again, don't need dimensionals because this urn is already dimensional up. And the happy is almost entirely over the top of the urn. So I'm not going to dimensional him at all. Now I'm trying to keep straight, so I've sort of got my bottom of my paper lined up on the grid paper, so it's maximised my chances of being straight. Now I am gonna just jut that off a little bit. So I do need some dimensionals at that end, because that end is hanging off the end of the urn. So just a couple of minis. And I'll flick them off. And just a bit of glue at that end. And then we can just pop him on there. Now you could leave it like that, happily. You could perfectly happily leave it like that, but I am going to bling it up a little bit. And so I'm going to use some of these 2023 to 2025 in colour dots. I've used so many of them that I'm on to yet another new packet. And I'm going to use some copper clay ones. So I'm going, and as you know, I do love the fact that there's a big and a middle-sized and a little one. So I'm going to do a big one. Whoops. Come on. Where am I going to put it? A middle-sized one and a little one over there. Okay, so there we have our nice Earthen Textures masculine birthday card. The only thing I've got left to show you is, I'm not going to do it right now, but I'll show you what I did on the inside. I did a couple of things that I've forgotten about. Okay, so I stamped just a vase of foliage. I tried to get in all the colours, so I added in some of those toy, and clearly I matted that onto a piece of copper clay. Now I haven't given you materials for that, so you can either, as I had originally intended to do, simply do your stamping on a piece of basic white. If you like the look of the copper clay mat, then all you need to do is cut that piece of basic white half a centimetre smaller, and the copper clay would be 10 by 14.3 and this would be 9.5 by 13.8 if you want to do it as a matted middle rather than just a plain basic white piece. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching me make that, and I hope you'll go away and do something similar yourself. Again, just a reminder that if you live in New Zealand and you've seen anything that I've used today that you'd like to add to your craft collection, please shop with me. There's a link to my online store and through the social media card which is about to pop up. If you've liked what you've seen and you haven't already subscribed, please do so you don't miss anything new that I do. And above all else, everyone, happy stamping.